you share with us the dream that you had about the babies?
Well, it wasn't a dream, it was a vision. It was a full-on vision. I'd been fasting for 21 days on water only, and I had a vision, and there was an angel standing next to me, and I asked him what he was showing me, and it was a field. It was like a football field, massive, with a a fence around the edge, cyclone fence, about 4 foot high around the edge. And on the field, there was all these dark figures at one end, and there was guys on the other end with chrome armour on, with swords fighting them. And every now and then, one of the guys in the armour got hit, and he went down, and they'd drag him back. And they didn't take him to hospital, they were praying for him. He'd get back up after prayer, and he'd go back in again. And I understood what was going on. The battle isn't against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities, seated in heavenly realms. And these were the saints fighting. And sometimes they'd fall, but through prayer, and they would get back up and they'd go back in again. And that's generally what happens. But then on the outside of the fence, there was thousands of babies screaming, crying, doing what babies do. And there was all these nurses running around with bottles, feeding them, giving them the milk. And I said to the angel, "What is this? What are you showing me?" And I said, "What are all these babies?" He said, "Some of them have been there for 20 years, some more." He said, "They should be in the fight now, but they still want the milk. They're still babies." And what he was showing me was the church. There's the few that are mature, that are in the battle, that are doing what God's called them to do. But the majority are just sitting on chairs and crying out for milk. Babes in the church. Paul addressed it. He wanted to give them meat, but they weren't ready for it. They were still on the milk. They were still babies. And it wasn't to do with time. It wasn't to do with, in a few years' time you'll be ready. It was to do with them just wanting to sit there and have milk and be chair warmers, like time for the church to grow up, time for the church to become what they're supposed to be, time for them to get up off the chairs and start to do what God's called them to do.
Amen. What a great dream or vision.